Good morning. Welcome back from break. Always good to come back after a break. My name is Jane Oates, and I'm the president of a nonprofit media enterprise based in LA called Working Nation. We tell the stories of work, so it's really fun for me to be not only with these gentlemen, but to be with you. I want to give you one heads up. On your programs, it will say that Sean Nagari, is that his name? Nazari is our speaker from Caltran. Sean had a last minute scheduling snafu come up, and we are so lucky to have Dave Saladay here joining us from Caltran. So if you want to make that adjustment in case you have to ask him anything 6 months from now and you keep your notes, you'll know who it was. But just to set up the panel a little bit, we are going to look on this panel very specifically at 4 very different employers, looking at everything from energy following Director Campos's speech, looking at some energy things all the way through the new manufacturing. And you'll notice I'm deliberately not using the words advanced manufacturing because 21st century manufacturing doesn't always look like what we have in the manual that we refer to as advanced. So I'm calling it 21st century. And we'll look at engineering and construction. And in order to give you a little bit better idea of who our panelists are, I've met them all on the phone and now in person. And I can tell you, you are in for a real treat. But I'm going to ask them to begin by introducing themselves and telling a little bit about the talent that's needed in their organization.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, and thank you to the host, the beautiful host here. What a great setting. My name is Randy Pico. I work at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And in that capacity, I serve as the Senior Superintendent for the Engineering Directorate. So what that means at Livermore, we are, on any given day, about 10,000 people on site, about 6,500 people. And of that workforce, about a quarter of engineering. And my role is really as a functional leader for what we would call technicians. And you'll always hear me use this term technologist, the technologists, the associates, the machinists. And that represents about 1,000 people in that workforce. And so we have an ongoing need for those folks. And yes, discussions talked about the baccalaureate level, but certainly at the associate level, trained technologists can meet the needs of many of those jobs that we have. And we are a workforce like many. Statistics show that we're doing everything we can to keep abreast of those retiring and replacing those and keeping our workforce strong. I consider the lab a knowledge-based organization. We're part of the DOE family, one of the national labs. And so a knowledge-based organization requires knowledge-based people. And so that's what we're about.
Great. Thank you, Randy.
Hi. Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Oh, great.
If you can't hear, would you just wave and then we'll have someone come.
Okay, so hi, everyone. I'm Dave Keltson, and I work with Northrop Grumman Corporation. I'm the talent acquisition lead in our Redondo Beach facility. Starting to sound redundant because I think I told you all that already, but it's a really great honor to be here. I want to thank Dave and Eric for inviting me here. We've been working together over the past year or so to get some steam around and energy around STEMCore and bringing in a more programmatic approach to how we hire our technicians at the entry levels and really building a pipeline. So really excited to be here. I'm here to learn. I'm learning a lot. So thank you to all of you that I've met and for giving me your advice on how to get this program off the ground. I hope to come back maybe next year and talk more about our successes. You know, I can talk more about where we are today and where we want to be, and we have a long way to go. So I hope to partner with many of you here to get there. Northrop Grumman, just to give you a quick overview, we are a company of about 85,000 employees. Our mission is to preserve our nation and our allies' freedom and to advance human discovery. So we're building, from a manufacturing standpoint, we're building everything from electronics, radars, sensors, avionics, to telescopes, aircraft. We build 55% of the F-18 in our El Segundo facility, and then we ship it off to our partners Boeing in St. Louis. They put the little pieces back on it, but we build the big part of it. We do the same thing with Lockheed. We build about 55% of the aircraft in our Palmdale facility out in the high desert. Again, we send that off to Lockheed in Fort Worth, and they put the nose and the little wings on. But you know, from the pilot's head all the way to the back of the aircraft, minus the engines, that's what we're building, and it's literally plug and play. We're responsible for the engineering of all of that, as well as the production. And there's a big difference in our manufacturing capabilities in Palmdale versus El Segundo, right? In El Segundo, it's a lot more manual. We do have some robotics, but it's an older program. Our Palmdale facility looks like a Ford plant. I mean, it's amazing, the robotics. It's just totally quiet on the floor, and you got all these robots moving around building these aircraft. So it kind of runs the gamut there. So again, I'm excited to be here. We have a huge challenge ahead of us as a company. We're slated to hire about 55,000 new employees over the next 5 years.
Wow.
And that's only with a projected growth of about 10,000 employees, right? So we plan to go from 85,000 to 95,000 employees. But it's going to take us hiring 55,000 because of the aging workforce. And so we really think this is important that we start early in K through 12, in our community colleges and our four-year institutions, to start connecting our engineers as mentors and bringing in apprentices and growing our entry-level pipeline.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Saladay. I am the district permit engineer for Caltrans District 4. Our district covers the Bay Area, which are the 9 counties surrounding the Bay. Caltrans manages, constructs, operates the state highway transportation system. We have about 20,000 employees. About 40% of those are engineers. And I think there's a common theme that we do have an aging workforce. Over 50% of our employees are retirement age, and so we will also have a large turnover in the next few years, up to 5 years. In terms of talent needs, it does become very difficult for us to hire and retain, especially with a lot of the other companies and organizations that have real good compensation packages compared to Caltrans. And it goes really across all classifications, but our transportation planners, a lot of our maintenance, electricians, maintenance workers, those are kind of the key areas that we're looking for. The Caltrans budget is about $14 billion. We are going to have a lot more work coming up in these next few years as well. So we will need to have that talent and to replenish as much as we can.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim Alwyn. I am the manufacturing department head here at SLAC in the Accelerator Directorate. I've been here for about 2 years. I came here after retiring from NASA Ames. It's down the street, one direction, after a 34-year career there. Interestingly, I was involved in a lot of the technical aspects at Ames, and they have lots of research facilities, and I thought, oh, I'll come here, it's no big deal. And I come here, and we're dealing with particle physics, but it was the mechanics of it all that were very unique compared to many other things. When you talk about ultra-high vacuum, and now, we're going, back in the 60s, there was a 2-mile-long accelerator that was built. And then it got, going through variations over the years, and most recently it was short of that. And now we're going back to the full length, introducing cryogenics in the first 700 meters to to accelerate particles even faster. So, any case, I've had this 2-year now experience here, and it's been really enjoyable. I'm a product, a JC, junior college product. My first 2 years of college was down the street at De Anza before moving on to the 4-year. And I got to say, it was quite valuable. It was specific to manufacturing, and there was an internship that was also at NASA Ames. So the 34 years was plus 2, so actually 36 years there. But I did do some private industry stuff. In any case, because we have this new project, and we're actually building the entire beam line, we've gutted it, and we're putting all the new stuff back in it. Over the last 2 years, I've hired about 40 people. We've had about 10% attrition in there, so we're still looking to hire about 10 more people. Our peak demand is going to be in May. It takes at least a month to get somebody onboarded, and then about another month to get them all trained up with all the safety training that's required here, because there's lots of exposures, radiation, lead, and fall hazards, whatever. So by the time you identify a candidate, to the time you can actually put them to work, it's a couple of months, at least. And there's background checks that are involved in that too. So while we don't employ a lot of people, we do require, or we do need, people with really strong technical skills, particularly mechanical. And those kind of large part come from people that have very diverse backgrounds. And so what we've found though is we've had to bring people in at lower levels and then train them up. And so, in 2 years you can do that. But now these last, few people, that last, percentage is always the hardest, whatever you're doing. And so we're going to have to look for more of the journeyman people, more of the senior people to bring on board. And that's really challenging. So engaging in what you're looking at doing, I think, is really important. And I know there's some questions that are going to come up in how these, the education and the actual experiential-based learning should combine. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim, very much. And I think, from Rob's great presentation, we know a lot about what's causing these shortages. We've heard not only about shortages in new positions, but what's happening because of retirements. So I want to pose a question to you. Since growth sector is all about partnerships, could the four of you tell us what your current educational partnerships look like, either to give you that initial talent pool, or, as you were just saying, Jim, possibly to reskill your incumbent workers to qualify for jobs that are opening? And if you don't have any current ones, there's a few people here that'll sign up with you. Tell them what your dream partnership looks like.
So I think a dream partnership, in any case, it's really a partnership. That's a good, I will call it the foundation of a house, or the 4 pillars in some cases, and particularly for the national lab. So a national lab like Lawrence Livermore, we're not going to hire as many as my colleague right here. But what we do represent, and what DOE oftentimes clearly represents, is the big science, that science that most companies can't take on, the pushing the envelope of science. And so when you do that, one of the things, I've had the blessed opportunity to work at many national labs on a visiting basis, and one of the common foundational threads is that technologist, the person supporting the science engineers. At Livermore, arguably, we have the highest concentration in 1 square mile with almost 1,500 scientists, PhDs in science folks. So that said, the partnership, that when we partner and look at what skills we need for the next paradigm shifts in the way industry might be going, be it additive manufacturing or AI or something like that, we're offering out, and the national labs are a great place for this, offering out what's coming in the future and what skills might be needed, because that's what these shifts are going to occur. And so we partner with organizations like many of the community colleges up and down the state and in other states to help them from an advisory capacity of what those skills needs are, because the skills needs is what he surveyed earlier become important. That partnered with companies and organizations like Growth Sector that really know how to deploy those kinds of needs and get them out there and help the marriages between the companies and us are very important. But community colleges play a vital role in that. You play the most vital role, particularly for people of color, minorities, and underserved populations that are entering those educational workforces. To get those skills, listen to your advisory boards, really partner out, listen to the companies like the growth sectors of the world that can help you make that partnership, because and then also oftentimes a funding source. Those are what I would call the 4 pillars. A funding source, a company like Growth Sector that helps facilitate that, the schools in really listening to those companies. It's just vitally important, I think. Because when you get that match, you get that partnership, you get that internship opportunity, But first and foremost, you're really helping that individual get an education that creates a foundation for a future, a career, not just a job.
Thank you, Randy. Anybody else? No.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I definitely would echo most of or all of what you're saying, and I don't want to be repetitive. So, you know, math is really important to us. Science is really important to us. We are also, you know, solving some of the world and some of the universe's, you know, biggest mysteries currently with the James Webb Space Telescope, and you know, the products that we put in the hands of our military to bring our soldiers home alive. These are amazing problems for people with math and science to work on and try to solve for our nation. So I would definitely echo what you say there. Our current relationship, I've seen a gap, right? And this is kind of why I'm here. I used to head up our college recruiting organization, and you know, I took it from hiring 13 interns and new grads a year combined in 2007 to 1,000 a year of each, right? And I got rewarded by getting a promotion, and I got to head up our engineering recruiting, and I did that for a couple of years. And then I came back to college recruiting because I really loved it, and I did it, you know, hired more. So I've hired tens of thousands of college students over the years, and I can't even count how many I've hired from the community colleges and the two-year schools. And so as I came back into the experience recruiting side and started working with our manufacturing group and our systems integration and test group, you know, I realized there's a problem there, right? They're hiring technicians at very high salaries, and they're doing work that, you know, we can train people to do. And so with the help of Growth Sector, Dave and Eric with Network Connect, you know, we're trying to gain awareness, you know, or build awareness within Northrop. So they've helped me a lot with building out our skills base and understanding what our hiring managers need from the community colleges and two-year programs in our local area. So you know, it is a work in progress. We've traded lots of great ideas on how we can, you know, build it even more. But internships is the key. I mean, getting those students those summer jobs or those apprenticeship opportunities, I think, is the key. It'll connect them, you know, with why they're studying what they're studying. It'll connect them with people who can mentor them, and you know, it'll lead to a job. And so for me, the ideal state maybe for this summer, you know, is to really, if anyone has candidates that are from the military, right? We need clearances at the highest level to really, James Webb is the only job that I have, the only program I have where I can bring on unclassified people, and it's kind of, we're, you know, in the last couple of years of a really long program. So, but if you're working, and I spoke to some folks from Palomar, right? They're working with the military to bring in students, and if they're within the, you know, 2 years of separating from the military, I can turn their clearance on like that. So that to me would be the ideal initial state, because we're all about hiring veterans. I think about 24% of our hires last year were veterans or retired military. And so if any of you have anyone like that you need to place, come see me. I will definitely, you know, promote those. But that would be kind of the ideal state for now. You know, 2-3 years from now, I'd love to be at a place where, you know, we're just cranking out, you know, hundreds of students across our company.
Well, they'll hold you to that. Yeah. They'd like to hold you to that. Jim, Dave, anything else to add on that?
Yeah.
On the partnership angle?
Yeah, in terms of curriculum, I don't see that Caltrans has as great of an influence as maybe we should. And the great thing about gatherings like this, it becomes an awareness that I'm certainly going to bring back to my executive team and provide suggestions on how we can better partner with our educators to see that the curriculum takes account of our needs. So although we don't have direct influence on a systematic way, we do have other informal ways in which we influence curriculum. We do interact with colleges and universities in many different facets. One of those is our division of research, where we do partner with transportation centers within the universities. And so they get to see the skills that are needed for the work that we do. And so when they go back and they develop their curriculum, you know, I think that is one way that it slowly works in to their class topics as well. So again, I think this is a great opportunity that I'm certainly going to be taking back, and hopefully we can make some improvement on.
Great.
I've got a question, and it's really going to curriculum. And when we want to work with curriculum, we work from industry advisory boards. That means that someone from your organization, preferably somebody in the operational role you'd like to fill, would communicate to the colleges, the community colleges especially, are required to have industry advisory boards. And so that's one of the things that really help us inform curriculum to be responsive. And so what formal things might you put in place to allow someone to communicate to the community college advisory board? And keep in mind that your changes won't be seen until 18 months out the earliest. But what can you do structurally to make that happen?
Are any of your companies actually on any community college advisory boards
Yeah,
now?
yes.
So that's great. But that's a terrific point.
But you know, we were talking about this last night, though, and in order to really influence change at a particular institution, right? They really want to see an investment in hiring the students. Right? I can't go to you and say, hey, change what you're teaching your students for us, and then not give back to you by hiring your students.
It's only fair, right?
So
I mean, that's
I think that's where we need to take it to that next level and bring that to fruition.
yeah.
I think when both the advisory board is important, and certainly we're both stakeholders in this process, and so the most beautiful process, enriching for both sides, is when we say this is the skills that we might need. And all companies we're going to have slight skills, but the one gentleman kind of said what a lot of skills are in Northern and Southern California. But you give those, and the most painful experience for me is when, and I've had it happen, we've all had this happen, when you give advice and somebody says, well, I can't make that change, it takes 18 months, I got to go to state, I got to do this, I got to do that. We all have to have the courage to kind of share what we need, be a stakeholder in rewarding that change as far as internships, but also making that change. You know, making that change, because it is a tough process to change curriculum. I certainly realize that.
But I think it's a takeaway that everybody here should listen to. One of the biggest gulfs between corporations and higher education is time. And when you tell a corporation who needs people today, and it's going to cost their bottom line, that you can't get them what they need for 18 months, they go somewhere else. And the somewhere else is usually not a nonprofit college. So I urge you to start moving that process faster. I want to do one more thing, and then I want to push some questions because we're close to running out of time. When we were having our call, I'm a great lover of community colleges. Anyone who knows me knows that. But community colleges nationwide run the gamut from the academic side of the house and the more technical side of the house being totally different worlds, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where they're perfectly integrated, and everything in between. I'd like you to think for a second and tell this audience where the marriage is, and it's becoming more apparent to me as an outside observer, of academic skills and technical skills. Some people will call them hybrid jobs, other people are just going to call them jobs. Someone on the phone, I think somebody from one of the labs mentioned their welders needed to know particle physics. So there's no welding instructor I've ever met who knew particle physics, and quite frankly, no physics professor that knew welding. So could you talk a little bit about how that academic world and the technical world are merging on some of your job titles or your actual work sites? I think that would be really...
I'll try to address that in one way. So I had an earlier conversation and talking about actual certain attributes of students as they come out of college and are entering the workforce. I'm a wholehearted believer in internships because I think it gives a student an exposure to what somebody down here said, you know, a career versus a job. And I think that's really important. You know, building widgets gets boring. but building systems, is a lot more exciting. I had a conversation with my boss this morning, and we we're talking about systems engineering. And working for NASA and now working for here, that is a real weakness. That can't be taught directly in school, but the way you think about systems can be taught. But so much of it is just based on experience, and that can take a long time, decades perhaps. But I think that's one area that could be explored, because I think no matter if you're building aircraft or you're building beam lines, or whatever you're doing, building wind tunnel models for the next generation of aircraft and spacecraft, that you've got to think beyond just where you're working. You have to think of the big picture and how all those connections occur so that you reduce risk, you decrease time, you improve efficiencies, and throughout.
Any other examples, gentlemen?
Yeah, systems engineering is a big focus for us, for sure. I think more basically, what we found in our assessment of our hiring managers' needs, which is something that we're currently working with a few local schools to implement, is making sure they understand core engineering principles, right? So we're going to hire a technician. We don't expect them to be an engineer, right? This is why they're finishing a 2-year degree versus going on to a 4-year degree. But they're going to be working with engineers. They have to communicate with engineers, so they need to speak the same language. And the stronger they are in math, the stronger they are in being able to read engineering drawings and go back and say, hey, I'm sorry, this drawing's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to build this. And back to systems engineering, right? The earlier in the systems engineering V that you can recognize that, the more value you're going to be able to provide to your team.
Let me get the microphone to you guys when you ask the question. We're recording this. Okay, thanks so much. Hold it a little bit close to you.
Okay, thank you. Let me throw a bomb out into the room a little bit. So I was talking to the former chancellor of the University of Tennessee, who used to be the interim president at University of Cincinnati, where they've had one of the longest running co-op programs. We talk about student engagement. We talk about the gulf that exists between academic and the real world. What is just keeping the technical world from going to a mass cooperative program, where kids, from the moment they step on campus, freshman semester, they get a little bit of academic pre-training, and then they're off. They're working, they're earning, they're learning. Then they come back and they bring more real-world expectations into the classroom, where faculty then has to respond, versus hoping that you come to a conference like this, you go back to your faculty, you tell them all the wonderful stuff, and they kind of, well, maybe sort of, but they don't really have any demands being pushed on them there. What's keeping the cooperative model, which is old, it's an old innovation, from being the de rigueur means with how we train technical people for the marketplace?
Well, let me start off. Let me try to answer that by first congratulating and thanking everybody for the fact that you have to realize historically what you're doing with math and getting people in 1 year to a place that it's almost unheard of academically, right? And so you have to thank each other for that. Because for me, when you can accelerate that math, when you can get somebody from an 8th grade level to a pre-calculus level in a year, the game changes for them individually. It's major impact. And if you can do that earlier, yes, thank you. The earlier you can do that, the earlier you have these options for, going back to the days of ROP or programs in high school, so that you can really start that, because that's the key. So I want to thank you all for that, because that is a foundational element that gives people a foundation to launch into many fields. We see it dramatically, we see it lovingly and positively with the veterans coming back, many of the post-9/11 veterans coming in these programs and getting the opportunity to go through something like that quickly. Up there in the room is Pete Schoenberg. He's our superintendent for machining, manufacturing. 100 people that are machinists. Every one of them has a foundation of math that they use on a daily basis. It's a foundation.
I just want to go back to your question because I'm not sure all the employers on the panel understand what a co-op program is. So Cincy, Drexel, Northeastern are probably the oldest co-op programs in the country. Part of the academic process is people have to go out and get a paying job. They can work in a nonprofit as well, but they get a paying job as part of their 4 years. So it's a paid internship on steroids because it's not a one and done. They go back and they can choose to go back to the same employer for 4 years, or they can shop. So I'm not sure they knew that, but let's take a word they know because they've used the word internship and they've used the word apprenticeship. Apprentices are employees. They are no longer official. They're no longer students. They have all the rights and responsibilities of employees. But let's frame it to just apprenticeship. How can all these educators make their students the most competitive for the few little hen's teeth of internships that exist right now?
You could start with starting a co-op program. So all the schools you mentioned are on the East Coast, and we're in the West Coast, and we hire locally. Most of our students, we found we bring people in from outside the state. They come in for a couple of years, and what happens? They go back home, right? And they go find a job somewhere else. When I was heading up our college recruiting, I had an amazing opportunity to turn 2 of our 1,000 interns into co-ops to work with 2 astronauts to work on the capture program for the next lunar lander. I couldn't get a single one of them to agree to do it. You know why? They didn't want to delay their graduation. They already had a job at Northrop Grumman. Why would I want to delay my graduation? You've already offered me a job to come back next year. So it is a big problem, and I see the value, and I've tried to grow our co-op program at Northrop Grumman over the years, and it's very difficult to both, pull from Georgia Tech, Texas A&M, the schools you mentioned, right? University of Alabama has a strong co-op program. We just were not able to do it, and the big reason is too, a lot of our summer interns stay on for about 20 hours a week, and we have hundreds of interns that are kind of making their own informal co-op program. And so with that also gets in the way of opportunities for co-ops from other schools. But
I think Kaz and Dave, that leaves something, that gives you something to work on in the group to see, because I think the onus of the co-op program is really on the college. It's expensive, it's time consuming, you need dedicated staff. So, I mean, when you have, I think I heard a dedicated employer here to try to do it, so I think it leaves those of you in this area a wide open possibility maybe to go through. We are already over time, but just if there's a burning question before we end.
I will add one equity comment to that.
Yeah.
So I do think if you want to get more women and people of color
Absolutely.
involved, the sooner it becomes more applied and you can show me the money as opposed to just talking about it as a possibility out there, I think the more traction that you get, that those young people will stick, they'll get a chance to try a few things and get around. As long as we're waiting too far until the end, a lot of young people, I had a cousin that had an all scholarship at Tuskegee. By year 2, she was bored. She's like, I don't see what I'm going to. So she switched to communications at that level. So it's something, because she'd be more people oriented. But I think the more you can get those young people exposure across it, the more likely you are to attract and retain them in the pipeline.
And we should make a commitment. Those numbers that Director Campos put up, unacceptable. We should not end, the next 2 or 3 years without moving that needle on women and people of color in these positions.
I'll tell you, my girlfriend's daughter went on 2 tours of the James Webb Space Telescope, one with her high school and one with a program through El Camino, a summer program. The first time she went on the tour, Chief Engineer John Ehrenberg gave the tour. She came back, I said, how was it? She said, it was okay. Second time she went on the tour, 2 women engineers gave the tour. She came back and said, I want to be an engineer at Northrop Grumman. Okay?
Wow.
That's
great.
what we need.
Join me in thanking the panel, please. I think they did a great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. How about
So
Mike
welcome
giving my
to the Work and Learn dialogue. I do feel we should have a table with some
Sorry.
interesting
Let me hold that
beverages
for you.
in front of us, so it's not really.
Oh,
But So this dialogue, we want to take what we've heard this morning from the
David
great
Saladay.
presentation by MC and by the employer panel and bring it down to the community, the regional level, with workforce agency and community college. So we've heard about some great opportunities, and the goal here is really to talk about what those really mean and can mean for your college and also for your partners outside the college. So my name is David Gruber with Growth Sector. I'd like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves.
Good morning. I'm Lawrence Thu. I'm with Work to Future, which is the local workforce development board for the San Jose Silicon Valley local workforce development area. I'm the special projects manager there, and part of my portfolio has been to push on developing strategies in our priority sectors, one of which is advanced manufacturing, another of which is the ICT sector, and a third priority sector that does touch on the interest and focus of this gathering would be the healthcare sector.
And I just want to mention, Lawrence is the unsung hero who helped finance the 23 internships here at SLAC. So just give him a hand.
Thank you. It was our pleasure. I wasn't the hero. The agency was the hero.
Well,
That's great. Good late morning. My name is Byron Cliff Breland. I serve as a chancellor for the San Jose Evergreen Community College District. And I'm pleased to see many of our staff actually here this morning, along with you. It's my pleasure to be here. I've been serving as chancellor since June of 2018, so fairly new in that role, but however, it was formerly the president of San Jose City College for 5 years, where we've been tackling these issues head on. As we've gotten a chance to really work closely with students and see what's happening from a system perspective. So I'm excited to be here. There's a lot to talk about, so I won't throw it all in the intro, and I'll kick it back over to Dave for starting the questions.
great. So just a little context. Earlier today, I think we heard three things that are really relevant to this discussion. First, that advanced manufacturing provides a great opportunity for the next generation workforce, and what that really means is community colleges, as all of you know. 2.5 million students in California. They're already here, and most of them are already working. So this is an ideal pool to pull from. Second, that the sweet spot for candidates is having this hybrid set of skills, academic skills in math, plus some computer skills, plus traditional technical skills, plus the hands-on work experience, the internships, the apprenticeship opportunities that clearly are important in helping prepare students for work. And then third, there's clearly a great opportunity right here in Silicon Valley. If you look at that chart that was shown between Santa Clara and Alameda, there's something like 70,000 manufacturing jobs. So that's really what we're talking about here with the community colleges and the workforce agency. So the big questions here are, how can we create pathways for residents, particularly economically disadvantaged residents, to the jobs that we're talking about, while also meeting the employer needs for a high-skilled workforce? And what is the specific role of government and community colleges in making that happen? So I am going to start with Lawrence and ask, what do you see as the manufacturing workforce opportunity in San Jose and Silicon Valley, and what kinds of initiatives are you and the San Jose city government pursuing now?
Thank you, Dave. With all due respect to our friend Rob from MC, and we actually rely on MC a great deal for the landscape work that we do, there are actually, by the latest figures that just arrived in my email box this morning from the EDD, 167,000 manufacturing jobs in Santa Clara County alone, the bulk of which would fall in vaguely into this rather nebulous thing called advanced manufacturing. So it's really a really large occupational field here in the county. It's one that's rich with opportunity and has been a tremendous challenge to exploit or take advantage of, save at the lowest levels. Part of my brief over the course of the last year was arranging for a year-long series of convenings of about 20 companies from one slice of the manufacturing sector here in Silicon Valley, the production services or contract manufacturing folks, who are the companies that actually make stuff here. As you saw on the MC slides, the largest company that showed up for Northern California was Apple. Apple doesn't itself make a whole hell of a lot of stuff here. They are a manufacturer, but they're also in a whole bunch of other business sectors, retail included. They're one of the larger retail companies around as well. But companies like Jabil, like Bestronics, like Creative Manufacturing Solutions, like a name that you'll be more familiar with, Foxconn, all have a presence here in the Valley, and they're all the companies that are actually making the stuff. These folks hire a very different, they have a very different actually employee profile than the Apples and Intels of the world. So at the landscape level, if you look at manufacturing here in Santa Clara County, the two largest occupations actually are software developer systems, software developer applications. Somewhere 3 or 4 steps down the stack will be assemblers, electronics. Well, the bulk of the companies who are actually making stuff here are the folks who are hiring those assemblers. And those assemblers are, relatively speaking, low-skill occupations. More importantly, here in the Valley, they're significantly underpaid occupations. So with all due respect to our manufacturing partners, the average or the median wage for an assembler here in Santa Clara County is a hair over $18 an hour. In order to afford the median house here, median home here in Santa Clara County, your household income on an annual basis, according to the California Association of Realtors, is about $267,000. So in order,
a little gap.
There is a little gap. In order to afford the average one-bedroom rent here in Santa Clara County, your income needs to be about $97,000. So there's a bit of space there. So one of the things that we've been looking at and working with our community college partners and with our manufacturing partners is trying to figure out if there are pathways that can be negotiated for folks who are entering the workforce at the very low end of the wage stream to move them fairly rapidly in the direction of sustainability incomes, livable incomes here. And training and education is key, and it's a kind of training and education that our community college partners are well-suited, well-positioned to provide. The additional challenge that we run into, and we've been working recently with Growth Sector and other partners on this, is the requirement that for those middle skill jobs that most of the companies we encounter have, which is hands-on experience. The training and the certification is all well and good, but the competition for work here is so steep that employers have the opportunity to pick from the most experienced people. So when they're looking at newly trained people, they prefer newly trained people who have a body of hands-on experience in that kind of work, which is where the subject of apprenticeship starts to come in. And we've been trying to introduce that concept with our employer partners as well. So once you cut through all the headlines, what we find in advanced manufacturing here, and we find something similar in ICT, is huge employment opportunities, highly competitive, a real desire on the part of employers for people who are already experienced, and a challenge for the workforce development community, both on the education side and the workforce development system side, to try and figure out how to align those kinds of challenges and opportunities with, frankly, the folks who are left out of the Silicon Valley story here in this community.
So Byron, we're asking a lot of community colleges now. We're asking them to provide academic training, to combine it with vocational training, and then also to fit in some real-world work experience, all the while a student is pursuing their education. How can colleges meet that kind of challenge?
Well, at first I'll just open and say, it's just great that community colleges are back on stage, or on stage at all right now. I know a lot of times we've all been to conferences. Many of us work at community colleges and been affiliated or understand the value of it. It's always been about the four-year degree. CSU, UC, we find ourselves always competing. And now I feel a shift. I actually have worked at a UC in a large private institution. And it was never about a community college. But that dialogue is coming back around there. There's a strong turn, and there's an imperative, I know, in California, and especially here in San Jose and Silicon Valley, where the haves and the have-nots are about as great of a distance between the two as you could possibly get. Our district, I know, like many community college districts, we serve in this area, we serve primarily female. We have about 56% female in the San Jose Evergreen Community College District. We have almost 80% students of color that we serve, primarily Latino, about 40%, African American, and Asian, many Southeast Asian populations. Our average age of our students is about 26. So the returning worker, and we have other populations of folks that are differently able, and obviously veterans. So it was great to hear about the veteran hiring. But these are places that people go given the cost of education. We're also becoming more valuable, if you would, given the fact that people are getting priced out of four-year institutions. Every year, it's going up. We've stayed $46 a unit. So when you talk about a pathway and a pipeline of folks to move out of poverty, community colleges are uniquely situated. Now, with that said, we have about 70% of our students that work and attend school. So when you talk about learn and earn opportunities with apprenticeships and talking about internships in any other way, it's been very difficult for us, and then we have a challenge to kind of change the conversation and say, you know what, how do we insert our students, given the skills that they do have, with whatever their background is, with being able to get into a company, learn about that company, get opportunities to interview, and be employable. So we've had to change that conversation. And honestly, from my perspective, I also see us more aligned with, I was having a conversation earlier with Matt about the California Master Plan. We're talking about the CSU, the UC, and the community colleges. Community colleges have typically been looked at as a feeder into those institutions. And now there's got to be, again, in my perspective, a sort of a changing the trajectory to go back in better alignment, I think, with K through 12, because we're talking about cradle to career. And if we're trying to be like the four-year and beginning to focus on, getting the four-year degree, which again, I have another perspective on that, and the value of a four-year degree is going down. People are going to college, coming out with huge debt. They're learning topics that are not immediately work applicable. Employers are saying, hey, you got people with degrees, but they don't actually know what they're doing when they get here and get the job. We're hearing that a lot more. Employers are starting to have better conversation and engagement with us about how we can develop a better pipeline. So I think a lot of my role lately has been working with employers to educate them about who our students are, and then developing a process or mechanism by which, given the fact that our students have unique constraints in terms of where they're starting in the higher education pipeline, of how to build a program that is going to uniquely meet their needs. And I'll give another quick example. I see President Keith H. of Evergreen Valley College back there. We just came from a conference focused on working with African American males in the community college system. And that conference has been going on, and the organization has been around for 12 years. And we've gotten to a point now where we have more of the mentoring coming from employers, thinking about, hey, well, how do we work with and understand some of these unique challenges of folks who have been highly underrepresented in higher education, if you would, for years or since its inception. So how do you now transition what they believe to be true about their ability, where they're coming from, and look at that creative, hard-working instinct to want to get in and have a better life? And so I think having those types of events and conversations with employers and setting up unique internships and apprenticeships that work for specific populations. There isn't a one-size-fits-all for everybody who we want to. And I wasn't here, but I keep hearing about the numbers that were up there. But I know it's very small in terms of the diversification in STEM fields. And it's not because people don't have the ability. It's because they have not had, a lot of times, the wealth or money to go through the training and to get the confidence to be successful in certain fields. But I think we're positioned to do that as I look out and see some of our faculty who are involved in programs. And we're seeing gains in partnerships that we do have with some of the UCs and some of business and industry. Recently got an award. I want to call out Dean Alexander Duran and Dr. William Watson. We went and presented at the Bellwether Awards. That's a national award for working with the Silicon Valley Career Pathways. And that represents work that's happening right here with the Adult Ed Consortium and our high school programs here in Silicon Valley. So that recently happened. So there's some great work happening in our district in this area, but I think we're still skimming the surface in terms of what we have to do to make significant change. And that's going to take a commitment to change from business and industry, and certainly a commitment from our institution to work with business and industry, almost on their terms to a certain extent as well, because we move very slow in higher ed. That point was made earlier. It's true. How do we push things to our curriculum faster? How do we really just develop a sense of urgency? Because I think if we continue on this path for another 10 years with the way the cost of housing is going, and really the lack of our ability to fill jobs. I saw a report that there are more jobs available. They just can't find people to actually fill them. So that's a unique challenge that I think we have to all rise to the occasion to meet.
Absolutely. Lawrence, could you talk about some of the initiatives that the city of San Jose is working on with community colleges now to meet these kinds of needs?
Absolutely, happy to. As we've looked out across the landscape and spoken with employers out there, we've reached back into our historic relationship with the community colleges to try and figure out fresh ways to tackle the really talent pipeline concerns that the employers have long term that they're struggling to figure out how to fill. The city and Work to Future, and I should explain, I sometimes have to draw a distinction between the two because Work to Future, although it's administered by the city of San Jose, actually serves a catchment area that's much bigger than the city of San Jose. We actually serve about 2/3 of Santa Clara County. The city actually partnered with the district, with Dr. Breeland's district, to create this program called San Jose Promise, which even at $46 a unit, community colleges can still be a prohibitive expenditure for folks on the low end of the income spectrum, particularly given the challenges to economic mobility in communities like ours here. So through the San Jose Promise program, the city and community college and district and one of our largest local foundations got together and pooled funds, created a program to essentially cover the cost of going to school. Since its inception, that program, you know better than I, because I sort of sit on the periphery of it, has expanded its mandate to try and also figure out how to support the non-college, if you will, cost of going to school, the costs of childcare for a single mom, access to sufficient food assistance, access to books, which actually are much more expensive in the community college students' economy than the cost of tuition. So that's a huge undertaking that the city has spearheaded, and I believe it's in the process of morphing into a countywide program now, which is really great. At the more granular level, we actually are working currently with Evergreen Valley College and one of our manufacturing partners who's championing this effort to create from scratch or recreate a manufacturing technician program. The company in question is called Carbon Microelectronic Solutions, and they're a DoD contractor, among other things. And they make microwave devices, and their director of manufacturing, understanding that she was having a workforce shortage problem coming down the pike, was looking around at how to fill her technician needs, not her assembler needs, but her technician needs. And ran into this really surprising discovery for her that here in Silicon Valley, none of the community colleges had an electronics technician program anymore. And it turned out that there had been electronic technician programs here, but student demand essentially caused them to go away in favor of all the infotech programs and programming-related programs that have become the vogue. So Cobham, some other industry partners have gotten together with Rob said something about vehicles, with the automotive technician program faculty at Evergreen Valley College to recreate a manufacturing technician program, a sector agnostic manufacturing technician program that will occur in two parts. And there'll be a first year that will be a foundational year that will be, in fact, sector agnostic. So it's intended to satisfy the technician needs of a broad swathe of production manufacturing employers here in the Valley. And then the second year will be a specialization year. So the idea right now is that the first year will cap with an internship that will provide the student on-site exposure to to particular companies. And then the second year will be a specialization year in which the student then gets to focus on a particular sector of his or her interest, twinned with part-time employment at an employer within that sector, or within that subsector, as the case may be. It's an ambitious idea. It's a certificate program, and the reason it's a certificate program, it's actually a two-certificate program, so there's a certificate at the end of the first year, certificate at the end of the second year, is because they can get approvals for the curriculum faster that way. And somebody mentioned the length of time that it takes for curriculum approval to happen. To short-circuit that, the program is being built initially as a certification program rather than an associate degree program, although it may eventually wind up as an AS program. It's been in the works for about 6 months now. The college intends, the partners intend to unveil the initial curriculum in May, and the intention is it actually starts up for real in this coming fall. So that's one example of a very rich initiative that we helped start. We've got additional interests and challenges ahead. We're working with the folks over at City College on their TechNest program to see how we can both facilitate the growth of that program and support it as well.
And for all you STEM cores, I just want to point out that the Cobham program requires calculus, a pre-calculus as a prerequisite for the technical training that they want. So even at this level of manufacturing, academic math is important. So Dr. Breland, what are you thinking about with the direction the colleges are taking, the new initiatives that you see to meet this demand, and some of the challenges that you see in making that happen?
Okay, before I answer, maybe we can do a time check.
It's time.
Let's do that one. Can
So
you
do
do
we
the one
want to do
question?
a final question, or? All right. Well, all right. So what direction? You know, the challenge is that there's a lot of directions going on right now. There are so many people that want to make a difference, want to help, want to be engaged, want to partner. It becomes a little bit of a struggle because we have to sort of reinvent how we do things as a system and as a higher education institution. In our district, you know, people have to be trained differently. They have to go to different conferences. Professional development has to be involved. But jobs are now turning over at the rate of, I think the cycle of a job is like 18 months. And that's quick. And once that happens, we have to continue to be ready to change our curriculum, change our training processes, make sure we get the right classes on the schedule. You know, it's a long, involved process. And so I think we're getting there, where we're a lot faster than we used to be. But our challenges are coming together. And just to talk about the promise really quickly, because you brought that up, it's a major movement. We're expanding college to everyone. You've heard about it nationally. What does free college look like? And the answer is it looks different everywhere. We have a promise program here that's grown from a city promise to a Silicon Valley promise. We're engaged in major fundraising efforts with the major mayor's office right now. But the idea is that if you break down the financial barriers, the biggest barrier for our community college students, especially given the demographics I gave you earlier, along with being many times the first in their family to go to college or even being undocumented, the biggest barrier is just support. How do they get through the system? You know, you can give somebody something, but if they're not prepared to actually take advantage of that and say the promise is going to be a livable wage job once you complete something here at the institution or get a certain type of training. So I think we're all getting used to what that means in terms of partnering, in terms of leveraging who we are as a community college. Again, I'll close out by saying, you know, I'm again very excited and enlightened by, you know, everybody who's here and also the amount of requests that we get to come and be a part of efforts that are going to be transformative in how we do things and how we prepare the workforce of the future, especially for these new collar jobs. And right here in Silicon Valley, there's no other place that we're seeing it at such a growth rate. But to be right in the middle of that and figuring out how to problem solve together is where we need to be. So thank you for taking the time.
Please join me in thanking our panelists.